Hello, you're watching TVP World News. I'm Inash Rawiński. The G7 issued a joint statement pledging to keep Russian assets frozen until the end of the war and to support Ukraine's future recovery. The declaration was released by the Canadian government, which holds the G7 presidency until the end of the year.
In the written note, the group reaffirmed that Russia's assets will remain immobilized until the country ends its aggression and pays for the damages caused to Ukraine. The statement also reiterated that the G7 remains committed to supporting Ukraine in defending its territorial integrity. At the same time, the group pledged to help build investor confidence through multilateral initiatives and coordinate support for Ukraine's reconstruction. Officials at the G7 summit also agreed to ensure that countries that finance and supply the Russian war machine will not be eligible to profit from rebuilding Ukraine.
Russian authorities have been forced to shut down several airports in Moscow after a swarm of Ukrainian drones hit the country. This marks the third consecutive night of Ukraine's drone attacks deep into Russian territory.
Operations have been suspended at Vnukovo, Domodedovo and Zhukovsky airports, which serve the Russian capital. According to the mayor of Moscow, Russian air defences allegedly shot down 6 drones that were flying towards Moscow. Later in the night, the Russian official reported 3 more drones downed by local air defence systems, and that emergency services were working at impact sites. So far, there are no reported casualties.
Ukraine's defense intelligence has sent Moscow a list of prisoners it plans to release as part of a swap with Russia. Each side is expected to release around 1,000 prisoners.
In a post on Telegram, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that Ukraine is gathering intel on all prisoners Russia wants to release as well. He also added that the POW exchange is, quote, likely the only concrete result of the talks in Turkey, conducted by Ukraine and Russia in Istanbul last week. Both sides have agreed to prisoner exchanges previously, but mostly on much smaller scales.
The European Parliament has voted to impose steep tariff increases on Russian and Belarusian fertilizers, raising duties from about 6.5% to 100% over the next 3 years.
The EU has been looking for ways to increase pressure on Russia with more precise sanctions. Earlier this week, Polish MEP Marta Wcisło warned that the imports of cheap Russian and Belarusian fertilizers are hurting local producers. Other MEPs called for measures to prevent EU businesses from financing Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The tariff hikes, which are expected to take effect on June 1st, were approved by 411 MEPs, with 100 voting against.
On the 27th of May, the Council of the European Union will hold a hearing regarding stripping Hungary of voting rights. This comes as the EU is looking for ways to override Budapest if it vetoes Ukraine's accession to the bloc.
This will mark the 8th time Hungary's voting rights have been on the agenda since the EU Parliament triggered Article 7 procedures in 2018. The measure allows for the suspension of the EU Council voting rights if a member state consistently breaches the bloc's founding principles. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán has repeatedly blocked and delayed EU's aid package for Ukraine, while at the same time opposing sanctions against Russia.
A heavy police presence greeted Georgian opposition leader Zurab Japaridze at Tbilisi City Court, where he was later placed in pre-trial detention. Japaridze refused to testify in hearings related to alleged crimes committed by the administration of former President Mikhail Saakashvili between 2004 and 2012.
Zurab Japaridze is a libertarian politician who co-leads the country's Coalition for Change. He believes the Saakashvili investigation is nothing more than a propaganda exercise by the ruling party Georgian Dream. Meanwhile, Bidzina Ivanishvili, the former prime minister and founder of Georgian Dream, has been vocal about his plan to ban any opposition party with ties to Saakashvili. Japaridze has been detained before. In December, he landed in jail as one of the leaders of the protest movement, sweeping the country since the last parliamentary election in October 2024.
The Romanian Constitutional Court has certified the presidential mandate of Nicu Șordan, winner of the second round of elections held on the 18th of May. In an intense presidential race, the pro-European contender scored a win over hard right rival George Simeon.
Romania's top court has officially certified the results of the May 18th presidential election, confirming Nicu Șordan as Romania's next president. Dan himself attended the session and was joined by Ilie Boloian, who acted as interim president following the resignation of Klaus Iohannis. In his speech at the session, Nicu Șordan vowed to guarantee civil liberties during his presidency. Earlier on Thursday, the Romanian Constitutional Court unanimously rejected an appeal filed by defeated presidential candidate George Simeon. In his appeal, the politician called for the vote to be annulled on the grounds of foreign interference.
EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas is visiting North Macedonia on Friday to meet with Macedonian Prime Minister Christian Mickoski.
The trip is part of a two-day visit to the Western Balkans. On Thursday, Kallas travelled to Serbia and met with President Alexander Vučić. She told Belgrade that it faces a strategic choice between Russia and the West. Today, Kallas will open the first security and defence dialogue between the EU and North Macedonia. She is also due to visit members of the Balkan Medical Task Force, which provides disaster relief in the region.
Coming presidential runoff on the 1st of June is becoming increasingly tense, with political uncertainty now worrying investors who are hoping for a clearer path forward.
The presidential runoff, set for June 1st, pits pro-European Union candidate Rafał Trzaskowski against Karol Nawrocki from the right-wing Law and Justice Party. After a tight first round, where the gap between them was less than 2 percentage points, the stakes are high. The far-right's stronger-than-expected performance is now pushing Nawrocki closer to the presidency, turning the election into a referendum on the government. This uncertainty has had an immediate impact on the financial markets, with the zloty weakening and stocks and bonds dipping. Prime Minister Donald Tusk has just over a week to convince voters that Trzaskowski is the right choice. But with Poland facing the EU's second-largest budget deficit relative to GDP, it remains unclear if his government can afford to make the bold spending announcements that could shift the tide in their favor.
As Poland heads towards its crucial presidential runoff on the 1st of June, all eyes will be on the live broadcast of a highly anticipated debate on Friday. For the first time, the two contenders will face off in a direct question and answer format, promising a dramatic showdown with high stakes.
On Friday at 8 p.m. CET, Poland will witness a historic live presidential debate. In a unique and intense format, the two candidates will engage in a face-to-face exchange of questions and answers, offering voters a chance to see how each contender handles uncomfortable issues and articulates their vision of the future. In the history of Poland's post-communist democracy, presidential debates have proven pivotal in shaping election outcomes. Iconic moments like the 1995 debate between Lech Wałęsa and Aleksander Kwaśniewski, when Wałęsa's aggressive tactics shook the political landscape, or the 2007 clash between Donald Tusk and Jarosław Kaczyński, when Tusk's barrage of questions on everyday concerns turned the tide in his favor, show the true power of such debates. As the candidates prepare to face each other in this high-stakes event, the outcome of Friday's debate could very well set the stage for the decisive vote on June 1st.
Officials from the United States and Iran are meeting in Rome for the 5th round of talks on Iran's nuclear program. The discussions form an attempt to reach an agreement that limits Iran's nuclear activities in exchange for lifting international sanctions.
The talks in the Italian capital were announced by Oman's foreign minister, who acts as a mediator in the discussions. The Trump administration wants to reduce Iran's uranium enrichment to an absolute minimum, or even cease the program altogether. It's the main point of contention, as authorities in Tehran insist that its uranium enrichment program is non-negotiable. While Iran declines to accept a total ban on enriching uranium, it is willing to discuss the scale and locations of nuclear activities in the country.
The U.S. Department of Justice has charged the suspect in the fatal shooting of 2 Israel embassy staffers with 2 counts of first-degree murder. The 30-year-old Chicago resident was also charged with murdering foreign officials and using a firearm to commit a violent crime.
As I speak right now, there is an individual who is being presented in court and charged with various crimes. 31-year-old Elias Rodriguez of Chicago, Illinois, is now charged by complaint after his initial appearance before U.S. Magistrate Judge Matthew Sharbaugh with the following: murder in the first degree for the murder of 30-year-old Yaron Levshinsky, a foreign official and official guest of the United States. Mr. Levshinsky was here on official business for the State of Israel. The defendant Rodriguez is also charged with 2 counts of murder in the first degree for both Yaron Levshinsky along with 26-year-old Sarah Lynn Milgram of Kansas. In addition, there are several felony firearms charges for discharging a firearm in the middle of a violent crime and for causing the death of an individual through the use of that firearm.
The Danish national hockey team has emerged victorious from a sensational win against Canada, securing their place in the World Hockey Championship semi-finals. This is only the second time in history that Denmark has defeated Canada in a competitive game. The last victory took place in 2023.
The Canadian team was leading the match 1-0 before the game was tied by Denmark in the 58th minute. With just 2 minutes left on the clock, the match looked set to go into overtime. However, the Danes had a different plan. With just 48 seconds to go, Nick Olsen snuck a shot behind the Canadian goalie to snatch the historic win. After beating Canada 2-1, Denmark will face Switzerland on May 24th. The Swiss are coming off a crushing quarter-final victory against Austria, which ended with a score of 6-0. The other semi-final, played on the same day, will see Sweden take on the USA.
And that's all for now. Thank you for watching, and please stay with us here on TVP World.